Scott Rivera, Town of Hammonton, Public Works. We're in the process of reinstalling the refurbished benches downtown. We've taken the time to clean them up, restain, repaint everything, and we're in that process right now. Hopefully be finished up before the end of the week. The benches are constructed of a cast iron metal on the sides. The wood is a Jatoba Brazilian wood. It involved a whole process of cleaning them properly, restaining them, getting the proper stain that will match up with the wood to give them a nice solid finish, and hopefully we get another 20 years out of them. They were in poor condition. They had been out there for 20 years. The trees and stuff had left some stains on them and just overusage. We took everything out. It was easier to do it off-site instead of on-site. Just due to the size and the mess, we didn't want to leave any stain or paint on the sidewalks and curb line. It was just an easier process that way, and it came out to be cheaper to refurbish them than to replace them. A lot of patrons enjoy the downtown. We put a lot of time and energy into it. It's a thriving area. We have new trees being put in, so everything's going to be nice and symmetric and uniform and clean. The feedback I've been getting for the most has been pretty positive, that they're happy to see the benches come back. Which that was the intended plan for the beginning anyway.
The Town of Hammonton received a grant from the State Neighborhood Preservation Program to make improvements in the downtown Hammonton district. One of the projects includes the removal of damaged trees and replacing them with new ones that are better suited for the environment along Bellevue Avenue.
Yeah, it's an ivy silk Japanese lilac. The flowering is white. That does come in a little after the green foliage, and it will hold its flowers most likely 3 to 4 weeks. A beautiful specimen tree, again, tree for a township. This is recommended, and the mayor and council chose this, and there's a very good selection. It's a very good sized tree. They weigh between 550 to 600 pounds each. They are established 2.5-inch caliber, which is a very good tree that's not going to blow over or bend or anything like that. So it should really grow and habitat that it's supposed to and the way it's supposed to, and from that point on, we're starting out with a semi-mature tree, which is really the right thing to do for the town. They're all going to match each other. It's really going to look like it's supposed to look in a beautiful town like we have. I will be watering these periodically throughout the season. Everything should be good after this year. They should be well established with new root systems, and it really should make a big difference, especially with holidays being decorated. It'll be very easy to do with these new type of trees. A lot of the trees were already out and dead, or they weren't growing correctly, so it was definitely to take advantage of the grant. Frank Zuber and the mayor jumped on that right away and found it, and it was the right thing to do. The process is going to take us probably 5-6 days to put them in, and hopefully we'll have this done at the end of next week. Appreciate this Green Giant, Lou from Green Giant. Thank you.
This Easter event that we do, we actually started during COVID. We did an Easter Bunny drive-through, and just bringing community organizations together has always been a very good thing, and this is one of the events that we do, bringing in a multitude of different community organizations to help give back to the children of our community. So we have Easter giveaways, we have candy, we have prizes, we have fun events, there's a DJ, and of course, the thing to expect, the Easter Bunny is here. So that's a great thing.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Hammonton Joint Land Use Board meeting for Wednesday, May 15th. Notice of this meeting has been properly posted and given to official newspapers. Please familiarize yourself with the fire exits to the right and rear of the council chambers. Do not proceed beyond the front benches without an invitation to do so, and please silence your cell phones. If we could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Ed Willerman,
Present.
Councilman Oliva, James Matro,
Here.
Ray Scipione,
Here.
Ralph Capaccio,
Here.
Michael Messina,
Here.
Michael Hosick, Jonathan Bask,
Here.
Chris Kalani,
Here.
Philip Barbagallo, Chairman Olivo.
Here. I need approval for the meeting minutes for May 1st, 2024. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Messina, Mr. Scipione, any questions? Can we have a roll call, please?
Ed Willerman,
Yes.
James Matro,
Yes.
Ray Scipione,
Yes.
Ralph Capaccio,
Yes.
Michael Messina,
Yes.
Jonathan Bask,
Yes.
Chris Kalani,
Yes.
Chairman Olivo.
Yes, motion carried. First item we have on the agenda is for an application for Pinto Bradley. Applicant seeks relief in order to operate a family business, floral assembly operation in the existing pole barn located at the rear yard of lot 25.01, which is located in the Highway Business District. Welcome back, sir. How are you?
And Mr. Chairman, this is not a D?
That's correct.
Well,
Mr. Landgraf will make a representation.
Okay. Do I sit here until you determine that?
Yes, you can. Well, yes, you can.
Okay.
We'll make the determination.
The only question that we had from a planning standpoint, and I realized it was in our report after you and I spoke, is that a florist is permitted use in the HB zone, but I don't understand the difference, and we had this in our report, between a florist and floral assembly, and whether that would fall under a florist heading or a florist type of use. So maybe that needs, for the jurisdictional issue, maybe that needs to be addressed first.
Okay. Have her
Yes, please.
Please represent yourself.
Okay.
Yeah, but if are making the assertion that the board would have to make a determination as to whether it's a permissible use in the zone. If that's the case, it's the zoning board.
Oh, either way, right, because it's an interpretation.
Right.
Shall I sit in the audience?
You
if
should sit in the
determine?
audience.
Thank you, Mr. Bull.
When you and I were speaking, I missed that part.
Okay.
Okay to proceed? Yes, please.
You want to swear her in?
You raise your right hand, please. Swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, sir.
Very good.
Hi, good evening. My name is Christina Pinto Caba. I'm the owner of 63 Pine Road, and I own Passions Florist. I have owned it for 7 years. We were on the Pike. We had some issues with our landlord, and we bought this home, and we are operating our floral assembly business out of it, at the pole barn in the back. And Mr. Landgraf is going to give you more details.
Swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do. Good evening, Chairman. Lance Landgraf, professional planner in the state of New Jersey, AICP, and New Jersey licensed planner. Thank you, Christine, for just a brief description. We think of florist, floral assembly. The only thing they don't do is they don't have retail there. This is just, they have the flowers. To me, that's a florist shop. It just doesn't have the retail aspect of things. So I would ask the board to determine that it is a florist-type use. I don't know if there's much difference between assembling flowers to be delivered or if they're picked up and purchased at the site. That's would be my explanation of what happens at the site. They handle parties, funerals, things of that nature, special events like that, where they assemble the product. You can't go there and just buy something. They assemble the product in vases or arrangements, and then they deliver it to the site, which is a florist service.
Yeah, so there's no personal in-store operation on the
That's
site on Pine Road?
That's correct.
And that's the only difference, because they're doing everything else?
Correct.
Right.
So
Sir.
let me just frame the question for the board. In the HB zone, 175-155 provides that, and this is the quote, local retail activities, this is what is permitted in the zone in this category. Local retail activities including but not limited to grocery stores, meat markets, et cetera, florist and jewelry stores, but excluding automobile sales. So we don't have a definition for floral assembly, which is, I believe, what is proposed out of the pole barn. So what you as a board need to do is determine whether floral assembly falls under the heading of a florist.
Could we determine that and turn around and say that there's no difference between floral assembly and a florist shop?
And actually, the name of the company, I think, is
Florist.
Florist.
So if we say there's no differentiation, then we could skip the D variance and or do we have to make a motion to that effect?
You would make a motion that it's the same and have a roll call,
Okay.
determining that the florist and florist assembly are one and the same.
I'll put that in the form of a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Capaccio, second. Any questions on the motion?
I might be getting ahead of myself or ahead of the application, but is there ever an intention to sell anything from this establishment?
No retail will happen on the site.
Any other questions? Can we do a roll call on that then, please?
James Mitra,
Yes.
Ray Schipione,
Yes.
Ralph Capaccio,
Yes.
Michael Messina,
Yes.
Michael Hozick,
Yes.
Jonathan Bask,
Yes.
Chris Kalani, Chairman Oliva.
Yes, motion carried.
Okay.
Chairman, there was one other issue, and I'll have Mr. Landgraf address it regarding the DNR that was issued in 2004.
Sure.
Which was approval of this property at the time that it was an RR zone.
I think it was B2, but a conditional use allowed the residential. So back in 2004, Dave Nato owned these properties. He subdivided it. We came in for that subdivision and a conditional use approval. I believe it was 3 homes because it was a minor subdivision. At that time, we obtained that conditional use approval for the residential use because right now the HB zone doesn't permit the residential portion of this site. Little nuance, but it's a deep, if you look at how deep that zone is from the pike, it's about 1,500 feet back. We're about 1,200, 1,300 feet back, so we're right at the back edge of that. Still in the HB, which doesn't permit the residential portion. So we would have needed either a certificate of nonconformity or a use variance to continue that residential use. We've already obtained that relief years back, 20 years ago. I thank Shelley and Joe for helping find that resolution to jog my memory, because I knew I did the work, I just couldn't remember what exact approvals we got. So I think that resolves the issue with regard to that use. The real portion of the application that we're here for, highlighted in the pink, I'll say, in the back of the property is an existing pole barn.
Hold on a second, just so we're clear, because the D variance has been eliminated, the full planning board could hear this application.
That's my understanding, yes. All right, thanks. Welcome back, Mr.
Thank you.
Lang. Thank you. Mr. Oliva. So what we're requesting is to be able to have that florist shop in that pole barn that was built by the previous owner of the property, used it for auto repair, not commercially, but he used it for auto repair for his own vehicles in the back. What's proposed is, as we talked about, this florist that prepares flower arrangement for weddings, funerals, birthday parties, similar type celebrations. No one comes here, they order it online or the phone, and then it's delivered to the property wherever that event is going to occur. Not a retail type use, no customers come to the property. All orders, as I said, are done and everything's delivered off-site. Flowers and supplies do come to the site by either UPS, Sprinter vans, or FedEx. They're delivered. There's a circular driveway as you see coming off of Pine Road. Deliveries are here, they take them in and they bring them back themselves. No large vehicle goes back there to the pole barn. These are my notes. The two owners are the main employees. When it gets busy season, prom, weddings, that kind of season, they do bring another assistant out there to help them with the property. So what we're looking to do is to change that use of that pole barn to this commercial use. Now, having said that, we thought we were going to need a variance for two uses on one lot. However, that HB zone comes back to help us in this case, where it allows that, two uses on one lot. Permits commercial uses and two uses on the same parcel. So the zone specifically permits, as we said, florists, as the board determined, that florists are permitted. So local retail activities, as Stuart went through, does list this as a permitted use. And in 175, 156K, individual lots within the HB Highway Business District may contain more than one principal use and more than one principal building or structure, provided the total lot coverage specified in the district is not exceeded. We don't exceed that. As you can see, it's a very large parcel. We don't exceed that coverage. So what it does require is to come and show the plan to the planning board to make sure you're okay with what we're doing there. Make sure we're not creating an issue with the neighbors. Make sure we're not creating a really active retail use in what is really a residential setting. We don't think we're doing that. So we've been operating there for a little while. Unbeknownst to them, they just started the business there. We were notified by the code office, hey, you can't do this. That's why we're in front of you guys. So we believe we're a permitted use. We're here to go over any site issues you may have and get your approval to keep using the property as it's been for the last several months.
The entirety of that lot's in the highway business?
It is.
Okay. So actually,
we're one lot shy of going into the...
Actually, the use proposed for the pole barn is consistent with the zoning. The only question that's already resolved was the residential use, because I think we eliminated that back in the day, so it wouldn't fragment the opportunities for commercial opportunities located in the highway business district. But it's pre-existing, it's there already. So.
Right. And there's residential uses pretty much the back end. Those last 3 or 4 lots are all residential.
Are there going to be any additional trailers on the lot at all, like empty trailers or anything like that? No. Okay.
Typical hours of operation are just normal business hours?
Yeah, 10 to 5.
So it's not like you got people coming, or they're not working late nights and making a lot of noise or anything like that. So, nope. Heck of a lot quieter than the automotive repair garage, I'd imagine, right? So. Watering flowers.
Any questions for the applicant at this time? Yes, sir.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Number of employees, sorry.
Two
2.
that live there, and then one, when they get busy, they may have one assistant come in
So
as needed.
at
3 at
most,
max.
1 extra car on the premise.
Right.
Okay.
Seeing nothing else?
No need for additional parking. There's no changes to lighting or circulation or anything. It's just operating as usual. I don't have any questions.
In the backyard.
Yeah, I don't have any questions.
Stuart?
I do have a couple of questions I'd like Mr. Landgraf to address. The previous approval, 2002 or 04, was the pole barn constructed at that time?
No, it was not.
Do we know when the pole barn was constructed?
You just showed me a survey of that. Remember when that was constructed? When the Harpers owned the property. There was so they purchased the property in 07, so sometime past 07. But they did get permits for that.
They got permits
for the pole barn.
Okay. So here's where the HB zone helps, the HB zone doesn't help. They got permits. I don't know how that would have happened. pole barn, storage structures are not permitted in the HB zone. So I don't know what,
Question was sort of when did it become the HB zone as opposed to what was the previous zone?
It was B2.
yeah, so I don't know the answer to all of that.
They received, from what we were told, they received permits for the pole barn, and all the other residential units around there have pole barns.
Pole barns.
Every one of my neighbors has.
Yeah,
Okay, I guess
it's true.
that sort of is what it is, so we'll accept that. And then the only other thing I think we'd like you to address, if you could, you have our report, right?
I do, yes, sir.
On page 5, below the zoning chart, and then leading into page 6, there are a number of requirements for general requirements for the business districts. If you could, I think you've run through several of them, but can you just run through the rest of them and just speak to your conformance?
The 40-foot adjacent to any street.
Yeah, and then going on to the next page.
Gotcha. So the first one is 175, 156C, requires at least 40 feet adjacent to any street or rear property line inside the HB district, not be used for parking or drive aisle. The structure, there's no parking anywhere within 100. The building is 205 feet back, so we meet the front, no issue there. We do have the driveway coming in, we're permitted to have that. Talks about buffering. There's really no buffering out here. It's all grass, lawn area. 156, all areas not utilized for building, parking, access aisles. So we cover with ground cover. It's all grass out here. It's all seeded. 156F, buffer area minimum of 50 feet shall be provided. The building setback requires HB district along any common property line with a residential district. We don't have that. There's one lot between us and the neighboring residential neighboring district, which I believe is AP. So we're one in from that, so we're not adjacent to that. 156I, each non-shopping center activity shall provide for off-street loading and unloading. We talked about how we're addressing that. We just have Sprinter vans or UPS or FedEx trucks coming in. We have that circular driveway. They come in, drop off materials. The employees then bring it back to the pole barn.
So the stuff gets dropped off at the house and...
In the front. It doesn't go through the house, but it drops off here, and then they take it to the back.
Okay.
I think that's the...
I think that's it. With that, I have nothing else.
So in summary, there is no variances that are required, is there?
Correct. That's correct.
Simply approval of the site.
So Stuart, you mentioned storage structure versus accessory structure, and then what's the difference in that particular sense?
I think it's a difference that isn't a difference. There's, storage would be permitted if it was under the strict interpretation of the ordinance, or the strict reading of the ordinance. Storage would be permitted as part of a principal building, but not as a separate building. Right. So this would be, so separate storage, not related to this particular application per se, but separate storage would be a separate building which would have storage, which is not permitted in the HB zone.
Okay.
One could argue that it should be,
right,
but that's where we are right now.
Okay.
Mark, do you have anything for us?
No, sir, I don't have anything for you. There's no land use, no change to the land, to the building, to the structures. There's nothing for me to comment on at this time.
Okay. Any additional questions for the professionals? Anybody in the audience want to be heard on this applicant? Seeing none, we'll close that part. Mr. McGarty, sir.
We need a motion to approve the site plan for block 4402, lot 25.01 as submitted.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Oliva, Doc Hosick, any questions on this motion? we have a roll call, please? For purposes for tonight, right now, Mr. Kalani will be alternate 1, so he's our extra person that won't be voting for this applicant.
Ed Willerman?
We have
Yes.
none.
Councilman Oliva?
We've taken the roll.
I'm sorry. I thought, but we have, Mr. Kalani is voting? I thought we
No,
have
he
none.
wouldn't be.
He's not, right, okay, I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Councilman Oliva?
Yes.
James Matro?
Yes.
Ray Schipione?
Yes.
Ralph Capaccio?
Yes.
Michael Messina?
Yes.
Michael Hozick?
Yes.
Jonathan Bask?
Yes.
Chairman Oliva?
Yes, motion carried. Thank you for coming back. and
Thank you.
patience.
Thanks, not at all.
Mr. Chairman, this next application is an application that involves a relative of mine, so I am going to recuse myself.
Okay. Mr. Kalani will be using your vote. Of course, we could all participate, correct? Okay, so the next applicant we have on file is for Dennis Donio on a minor subdivision with C variance for 111 Rainier Avenue in Hammonton. The applicant is forward and be heard. I don't know if you're new here or not, but welcome.
Good evening, everybody. Nice to see you again. I'm sure you're getting tired of seeing me all the time. As you may remember, my name is Cheryl Lynn Walters. I'm a partner at the law firm of Nemad Davis & Goldstein. We're here tonight representing Dennis Donio on an application for minor subdivision to create 2 lots out of 1. We're proposing a flag lot, which is a permitted lot shape in your ordinance, subject to certain bulk variance conditions. We need some bulk variance relief from certain of those conditions, and our engineer and planner will testify to those. Just for housekeeping purposes, the application was filed by letter dated March 20th, 2024. Was recommended for completeness and scheduling on April 29th via the ARH April 29th report and scheduled for hearing tonight. Notice was published in the Atlantic City Press on May 4th, was sent to property owners within 200 feet, dated on May 3rd. And proof of service and publication was delivered to the board secretary on May 9th and is on file. Therefore, you have jurisdiction to hear the application this evening. As you're accustomed to, I did prepare a witness and exhibit list, and I have an exhibit packet to hand out to you. That's going to identify our 3 witnesses. Brian Peterman is our engineer, Dennis Donio, the applicant, and our planner, Stephen Hawk. If it's okay with you, I'll circulate that, and I have some green cards for your secretary as well.
Doing good, thank you. Thank you very much.
Ms. Walters, was it?
We're not tired.
He's done. Hopefully I won't wear out my welcome shoes. It might be a while. All right, so if you would like, if it please you, we could swear all 3 witnesses at once, and then we'll introduce them as we go.
Raise your right hand, please. You swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do.
All right, so we're going to start tonight with our civil engineer, Mr. Peterman. Then we'll bring Mr. Donio up for some testimony and finish with our planner. Mr. Peterman's going to put something up on the board for you. Okay, so Brian, if you would stand to my right, please. We're going to use that microphone to the best of our ability. If you would please state your name and your affiliation for the record.
For the record, Brian Peterman, professional engineer for the applicant. Peterman Maxey Associates, 189 South Lakeview Drive, Gibbsboro, New Jersey, 08026.
Mr. Peterman, are you a licensed engineer in the state of New Jersey?
Yes, I am.
Would you please review your education and experience with the board?
Certainly. I am a Bachelor of Science engineering degree from Penn State University back sometime in the 80s. Ever since then, I've been concentrated on land development work, focusing on site plans, subdivisions, and such. Throughout my career, I've represented various municipalities to South Jersey, the MUAs, Township Council, Zoning Board, Planning Board.
20 years ago, I went out on my own and started Peterman Engineering, transitioned into Peterman Maxey Associates, and are presently there to this day.
And Mr. Peterman, have you provided testimony in front of land use boards across the state of New Jersey in that time?
Yes, I have.
I would submit Mr. Peterman as an expert in the field of engineering.
Absolutely accepted.
Great, thank you. Mr. Peterman, you're the project engineer for the project?
Yes, I am.
And are you familiar with the property and the surrounding area?
Yes, I am.
Did your office prepare the proposed minor subdivision plan?
Yes, we did.
And you're also involved in the Pinelands application process, correct?
Yes, I was.
Okay, we have an exhibit that we've handed out. I've handed out an exhibit packet, which we've pre-marked. The first page for the record is a witness and exhibit list, pre-marked exhibit A01. The second page of that is an aerial exhibit A02, which I believe is sitting on the board right there. Would you please familiarize the board with the subject property and its the surrounding area?
Certainly. For the record, this is our aerial plan. North is up, pointed up. We've shown basically a cross-hatched area of the lot in question. That runs along Rainier, which basically goes right to left or west to east. On the right-hand side, we have 3rd Street. Down below, we have Egg Harbor Road, or North Egg Harbor Road, down further, kind of down to the southwest. That gives you basically orientation for the property. We have Traditions out on the northeast side of us across 3rd. That's basically the general layout. We have residential basically surrounding us, primarily with Traditions, and to our east. To the north is residential. To the east, or to the west and south, is property that's owned by a Donio family. So that's generally a residential zone or residentially used property overall.
Just because it's going to become relevant in the future, the wooded lot that's behind us, that's identified as lot 25, correct?
Yes.
That lot is actually owned by the applicant, an entity that's managing membered by the applicant's father, correct?
That is correct.
All right, and there's a portion of that property that comes into play for the Pinelands approval. We have an exhibit, and we'll explain that to you in a few minutes. All right, so you've nicely identified the property and its surrounding area. If you would, please then turn to the current and proposed conditions for the subdivision.
Certainly. We, just for the record, this is a minor subdivision plan as submitted as part of the application. We've just put it on the board for reference purposes.
And in the packet, it's marked as A03.
So again, Rainier Road is across the top, north facing up. We have basically a 3.5 acre parcel that we're proposing to subdivide into 2 equally sized 1.78 acre properties. It's a very skinny and long property, as they say in the industry, a bowling alley type lot. Lot's frontage is about 170 feet, about 900 feet deep. We are proposing a flag lot for the proposed lot B. Proposed lot A will be the remaining residential lot with its existing improvements, driveway, and the like. And then what we're proposing is a flagpole with a residential home in the back, and we position that home in the back to be able to try to have a little privacy and a little bit of separation between the front lot and the back lot. It does create several variances, and I'll defer to the planner in regards to some of those variances and those listed in ARH's review letter. But basically, we'll need some side yard bulk variances for that length of the pole, given the long nature of the property. The width of the pole, given the existing conditions of the driveway and the proximity of the way the existing house is placed on that. Having the pole on the east side of that property will also reduce the side yard setback to the existing dwelling, so that will be a variance as well.
So when you're looking at the house, the pole's on the left or right side of the house?
Left-hand side, as you're looking from the street into the property, will be along the left-hand side. And the reason why we did that is twofold. One is we're pinched in a little bit on that side as well on the right. The residential home to the right of that, as you're looking in from the street, or the west side, is a little bit closer. And the properties that face Third are a substantial distance away from that pole line. So we thought that was the most appropriate spot for the pole portion of that flag lot.
So Brian, the property obviously is located within the Pinelands, and we've applied to the Pinelands for a certificate of filing, and they've issued a review letter and a report with a certificate of filing. They're indicating the need for septic dilution purposes to deed restrict some adjacent lands. Is that correct?
That is correct. What we're looking to do is to have the conventional septic systems at 3.2 acres. We're going to deed restrict a portion of the rear lot in order to have that septic dilution that Pinelands is looking for. So what we're doing is we're going to have a deed restriction for that adjoining parcel. We did, as part of the package, include a deed restricted exhibit as our sheet 2 of 2.
And it's marked as Exhibit A04 in your exhibit packets.
So again, about the center of the lot is the property in question. And then back there along that rear property line that runs along some of the adjoining parcels, we have approximately 97 feet to 105 feet by approximately 900 feet crosshatch area, and that is the area of the deed restriction that's proposed. So that will be permanently restricted against any further residential density improvements, so that can then be protected for septic dilution purposes.
And while that property is not part of the subject application this evening because we didn't need it for the subdivision, the property owner is here and can confirm that they're agreeable to that deed restriction. It's not, and we did notice for all property owners within 200 feet of that lot as well, just in case.
Okay.
All right, so once we're done here tonight, assuming an approval and we get a resolution at some point, we'll submit back all that back to Pinelands and create the deed restriction at that point, and we would be willing to provide the board a copy of the recorded deed restriction, and of course the Pinelands no call-up letter once that's completed.
And we concur with that, yes.
Okay. As far as outside agency status is concerned, we're submitting an application to Atlantic County this week. And we talked to you about Pinelands. What about soil conservation, Brian?
Soil conservation, we believe, will probably be an exemption. That's what we're going to be applying for. Then we'll go through that process. If they feel it's exempt, then they'll issue an exemption letter. If they believe there's an application, certainly we'll have to apply for soil erosion sediment control plans and et cetera for that. And then certainly we understand that any approvals granted by this board will be conditioned on all applicable outside agencies, that being one of them. So we understand that we will need to address that as part of that potential condition of approval.
Okay, so just going back to the application for a second, the variances that I think we've listed, I'd just like to note them for the record and have Mr. Peterman confirm, and so Mr. Weiser can hear what we say, see if he agrees or that we have all the right variances listed. So there are requirements in your ordinance in the LDO regarding flag lots. You have a minimum side yard setback for the flag portion. You have a minimum pole width and a maximum pole depth, and a minimum separation to another driveway and a minimum buffer. So those are the only other variance I indicated, and it's kind of oddly worded. It's hard to explain, but if you have a pole depth greater than 400 feet, which we have, the ordinance requires that the driveway then become a public street and or a cul-de-sac provided, just to allow for turnaround back there. We're not proposing that pole to become a public street. It's going to be a driveway. We're not proposing a cul-de-sac. It's only servicing one lot, one single-family dwelling. To the extent, Brian, that there's any overlap of the proposed driveway with the existing driveway that services Denny Donio's property, we would agree to create a cross easement between the two lots to allow that condition.
That is correct.
All right, so those are the variances that we've indicated. I just wanted to note those on the record. Our planner is going to give you the justification for those later, and if I miss any, Stuart will let us know.
Yeah, if I may, just since we're on the variance applications, not only those for the pole barn itself and the orientation of the pole barn.
For the pole of the pole barn, or the pole lot, I'm sorry. We also, your ordinance also requires an 80-foot side yard setback for the flag portion of that flag lot. As we stated earlier, we're very pinned in, so we would need variances, at least a very small, thin building envelope. So we would need some variances for side yards there. What are we proposing for those side
We're
yards?
proposing 41 and a half on one side and 41.1 on the other, and that's for a fairly large dwelling, more of a rancher style. It may be less or maybe more than that, but we wanted to create something large enough that fits the area of the development in the area. So we wanted to kind of stretch out a little bit for those in lieu of the 80-foot required for each side yard.
And we're taking a conservative approach with that request, correct?
That is correct, yes.
So if there's a two-story house built that has a smaller footprint, we would actually have an increased side yard setback on both sides. But right now, we took a conservative approach and assumed a sizable ranch
That's
type
correct.
dwelling. Okay.
The second is the side yard setback to the new pole portion of the flag lot, where we're proposing now 11.9 feet that would be adjacent to where the joint driveway or that whole portion of the flag lot would be. Again, that's for the applicant's home, so he's aware of it. Obviously, is filing the application if he concurs with the need for that. And then I believe the other one is a proposed side yard, reduced driveway buffer of 10 feet. Again, because of the size variance of that of 30, we believe we need that variance as well, and I believe that's also listed in ARH's letter that's included with that as well, along with a separation between driveways of less than 24 feet. There's going to be some commonality in the driveway as it comes back in, so we'll certainly not be able to meet that requirement as well. Part of that is to help reduce impervious coverage and such, and just the proximity and the location of the existing driveway itself. So we believe those are the variances as needed, but again, we'll clarify any additional as may come up in once they present their letter.
Yeah, I just want to confirm too, I mentioned pole width and pole depth. The permitted pole width, or the required pole width is 50 feet. I think we're proposing 30, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And the maximum pole depth permitted is 400 feet without that cul-de-sac that I mentioned, and we're proposing 563 feet.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. So that's all I have for Mr. Peterman at the moment. I'd like to bring Mr. Donio up to explain the purpose of the subdivision and what the intended, the intended owners and operators or occupants of that rear lot. So, Mr. Donio, you've been sworn, you're providing testimony under oath. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
Okay, and have you been here this evening, the whole time this evening, and listened to Mr. Peterman's testimony?
Yes.
All right, just state your name and your address for the record.
Dennis Donio, 111 Rainier Avenue, Hammonton, New Jersey, 08037.
So you are the property owner, correct?
Correct.
All
Mr.
right.
Donio, could you come a little bit closer to the microphone? Thank you.
So, Mr. Donio, how long have you lived at this property?
Just under 4 years.
Okay, and other houses, Mr. Peterman mentioned that a lot of the surrounding houses to the west and behind you, and the property behind you is owned by your family. Is that an accurate statement?
That's accurate.
Your dad lives, what, 2 doors down?
2 doors down.
2 doors down, and the property behind you is owned by your dad through an LLC, correct?
That is correct.
All right, so you're familiar with this project, and you've made yourself familiar with the proposed subdivision plan. I assume you're okay with it since you're here and you're the applicant?
Yes.
Can you explain to the board, essentially who you intend on living in that building, that new dwelling in the back? What the purpose of the application is?
Sure. My brother, Michael Donio, potentially for him, or we had something happen about 4 years ago. So we might want to leave it open for my niece and nephew, or maybe somebody else in my family, one of my sons down the road. So that's really what we're proposing it for.
So the intention is to keep it part of the family?
Absolutely.
And of course, that's your intention because it's directly behind your house, correct?
Yes.
And we're providing some buffering around the proposed dwelling and between your dwelling and the proposed dwelling. Are you, as the resident and owner of the existing dwelling, are you comfortable with that?
Yes.
All right. And Brian we just indicated that you would agree to comply with the board's comments and will provide, to the extent necessary, a cross easement for any shared driveway area.
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any objections or concerns about the plan as we proposed it?
No, I do not.
Those are all the questions that I have for Mr. Donio.
Any questions for Mr. Donio at this time? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you. And I dismissed Mr. Peterman pretty quickly, but did anybody have any questions for Mr. Peterman?
We would have got him back. Right. Any questions for him?
Yeah, I have. It's probably not even relevant, but on lot 4.02, right where it comes to Rainier, Avenue, there's an area that says Stone.
Along the
Stone
frontage?
area.
Oh, yeah, okay.
What is that?
Yeah, it's river rock, shrub beds.
It's basically a landscape bed.
Ah, okay, but that's on the neighboring property.
That's on the
It's
neighboring lot,
property,
correct.
and it's a decorative landscape bed.
Thank you.
All right, if there are no other questions for Mr. Peterman, then would like to bring up Mr. Hawk. Mr. Hawk, you were sworn already. Would you please state your name and spell your name for the record?
Sure. Stephen Hawk, it's Stephen with a PH, and Hawk is Hawk.
Mr. Hawk, are you a licensed planner in the state of New Jersey?
I am.
Would you please explain to the board your education and experience?
Sure. My Bachelor of Science degree is from Stockton University. After that, I went to work for the City of Vineland. I was there for 28 years as the staff planner, reviewing site plans, subdivisions, use variances, etc. I became licensed in 1994 by the state of New Jersey, and then became a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners in 1995. Left city employment and went out on my own, and have been practicing for 7 years. Appeared probably before well over 50 boards and many applications.
I submit Mr. Hawk is an expert in the field of professional planning.
He is accepted.
Thank you. Mr. Hawk, have you been here this evening during the presentation that came before you?
I have.
And are you familiar with the project and the project site?
I am.
Have you reviewed and familiarized yourself with the area, the land development ordinance, and the master plan as it pertains to this application?
Yes.
All right, we've identified on the record the variances that we believe are required. Mr. Weiser, of course, will let us know if we missed anything. But based upon the list that we essentially provided, I assume that you have some planning opinion about those, to the negative and positive and negative criteria, and exhibit to go along with that. So just for reference, when it gets to it, exhibit A05 has been pre-marked. It's in your packet. That we just call it a planning exhibit. And I'm going to sit down and let Mr. Hawk explain to you how we can meet the criteria for full variance relief.
Okay, I'm sure the board has heard the difference between a C1 and a C2 variance. The C1 variance, which was the original C variance, which was the only type of variance that could be granted, was a hardship variance, or something with that had to be granted because of exceptional conditions. But in the early 90s, the legislature put in the C2 variance, also known as a flex C or a soft C, and it basically says that if the benefits outweigh the detriments of what's being done and the violations to the ordinance substantially outweigh the detriments of that deviation, the variance can be granted. And it opened up a lot more leeway for variances to be granted. And that's what we have here before us today, C2 variances associated with this flag lot, which the Town of Hammonton does allow flag lots. You have standards and you have criteria. And we just don't meet every one of those. And we have several C variances, and that's what I'm going to go through with my testimony. So there's a nice case known as Pullen versus South Plainfield. And Pullen in the early 90s also basically said that you do not have to have the specific variance itself to have a benefit outweigh the detriment of that specific variance. It is allowed to be the overall development in its totality, the benefits of the overall application that's before the board. So we don't have to take it bit by bit, and with Pullen, it opened that up, and that's where this case rests as well, because of the overall benefit of creating an extra lot and efficiently using the land, and basically having density that's in line with what the ordinance requires, and because of the deed restriction, also in line with what Pine Land requires. So in any case of a C2 variance, you have to have the positive criteria. It's the purposes of zoning. I've identified a couple of them. Purpose G, I'll give you the long version of it, provides sufficient space and appropriate locations for a variety of agricultural, residential, recreational, commercial, and industrial uses
according to their respective environmental requirements. So what we have in this situation is the town allows residential development in this zone. It's a feature of what's permitted. And the respective environmental requirements are what's put forth by Pinelands and through Hammonton as far as density goes. And even though we don't meet all the small, minute and details of the flag lot, we essentially are meeting the area requirement. So the density is in line, and therefore we meet that positive criteria, purpose G. And we have that as one of our weighted things on the positive side. Purpose M, the short version is more efficient use of the land, but the long version is to encourage coordination of various public and private procedures and activities shaping land development with a view of lessening the cost of such development and to the more efficient use of the land. And in this case, the public end of it is the ordinance allowing flag lots, allowing development, allowing the density that we have, and lessening the cost is that we're not going to be putting in a public street built to RSIS standards with curbing and drainage. We're just going to have a residential driveway and have it serve the house that's in the back. And we're going to more efficiently use the land. One of the things that came up with my experience in Vineland, and it's something that is in Hammonton as well, there's some really big blocks where there's streets that are far apart. Charles Landis, when he laid out Vineland, he laid out a lot of the east-west streets a half a mile apart. So all the lots were a quarter mile deep, 1,320 feet deep. Probably you know this, that Charles Landis was one of the founders of Hammonton, and he laid out streets, not exactly the same, but he laid out streets far away. And in this case, this is a mega block with Rainier and 3rd Street, and the way it lays out. There's a lot of empty space in the center of that mega block, and these lots, these several lots that are on Rainier, including ours, they go back quite deep, and that land is wasted and is not efficiently used. So by having the flag lot provision that your town allows and having us utilize that meets purpose M and gives some weight on the positive side with regards to that. So on the two positives that I mentioned, whenever you do meet a positive criteria, you also meet purpose A, which is promoting the general welfare automatically. You are promoting the general welfare by producing a lot and producing land that can be utilized for homes, which is what this zone permits and what this zone calls for. So on the negative side, which I feel is on the slight side as far as any detriment, you have the first prong, which is no substantial detriment to the public good. Is what we're proposing out of character, or will it change the character? And what I feel is happening, that by dividing this lot into two basically 1.7 acre parcels, it's actually coming more into character. I canvassed the lots in the area, especially the ones on the north side of Rainier, the ones on Carriageway, some of the ones that are on 3rd Street to the north of Rainier, and then even the ones just to the east of our lot that are in between our lot and 3rd Street. The majority of the lots are 1.5 to 1 acre. As a matter of fact, some of them are 0.5, 0.6, 0.8. I counted 21 out of the 23 lots north of us, including Carriageway. 21 out of 23 are in less size than ours. And all of them don't have public sewer, which is a definite requirement, and it's not a requirement, but when you do have public sewer, you can go down to a lower amount. So by dividing our large lot, we're actually coming more into conformity with the lots in the area, and we wind up having, we're definitely not taking the site and the area out of character. As far as the second prong of the negative criteria, no substantial impairment of the zone plan and the zoning ordinance, you have a situation where, let's talk about the frontage first. There's a requirement for a an inside lot, when you have a flag lot with it, to have 120 feet, and the flag lot portion, the pole, is supposed to have 50 feet. So that 120 plus 50 is 170. We have 169 and change, so we're almost there. We just happen to have a different division between those two numbers. We have 139 feet of frontage for the main lot, which is 19 feet more than what's required, but we have 20 feet less on the flag portion. So we're just shy of what's required. In my feeling, or the way I look at it, is we're meeting the spirit of what that ordinance requires. The ordinance requires basically 170 feet, and we're just not divided exactly the way the ordinance wants it. If you're looking at the tax map, you could tell the difference, but if you're out in the field and you're on the site, you would never know that there was 139 and 30. So I feel the net effect is the same, and that's why there's no substantial impairment of the zone plan in that case. With regards to the stem or the pole part, which is 30 feet versus 50, I think it's in a position in this neighborhood, especially with what's adjacent to it to the east, it's in a perfect position to be more narrow than what it's required to be. It's basically up against the rear portion of a bunch of lots that front on 3rd Street, lots that are 750 feet deep. And that's what this exhibit shows right here, is our pole portion of the flag lot will be right up against these lots that all front on 3rd Street. And I took a measurement of where our pole area of the flag lot would be and drew a line to the nearest dwelling, and it's 340 feet. By ordinance, if you had a by right 50-foot flag pole, and you had a rear yard that conformed, which is 60 feet, this driveway could be 60 feet away from a house. In this case, we have a 30-foot pole, which is 340 feet away from a dwelling. It's 400, 500, even more of a distance away from some of these other homes. So the way I look at it is that we may have a narrow pole, but we have it up against an area where it's quite undeveloped and far away from any home that the negativity of that driveway could affect someone. We could even be as close as 25 feet to a side yard, and since most of these are all rear yards, this is just the one undeveloped lot that's a side yard. We're not even having a negative effect on that. So I feel that there's no substantial impairment of the zone plan and zoning ordinance. I looked at the master plan, and there is a recent 2023 version of a reexamination report that talks about, under section Y in 5.3.2, talks about the lot sizes in the RR zone are appropriate and have been adjusted to meet the standards that the town wants. So as far as the individual variances themselves, I can go over those, and
I just have one quick question.
Sure.
The flagpole coming down on the left side of the house, how close is it to the house, the existing house, the Donio house? 12 feet.
I believe that's 11.9 feet.
11.9 feet from the house to the property line of the pole, portion of that flag line.
So that happens right here at that closest point of nonconformity.
And
Since the house is skewed, the front part of the house is not that close. It's actually farther away.
So correct. So that back corner of the house to the lot line is how wide?
11.9.
No, there's only 11.9 feet between that back corner of the house
and the lot
and the
line
lot
that we're
line.
proposing. Correct.
So the house was built that way to begin with?
It was. The house is there, and the house is actually laid out parallel and perpendicular to Rainier.
Yeah, to the
but
street.
Because of the lot lines
Right.
are diagonal, it only is affecting that one corner. So to have this 30-foot wide a pole in this area, it creates that variance. But that's for the benefit of, and I think what outweighs this small constriction and this small deviation is the fact that we're utilizing this land and more efficiently using this land. And I think the value of that outweighs that small deviation in that one corner.
Yeah, I understand. I always think ahead if Mr. Donio doesn't own that property and that property, what's going to happen ahead of, down the line, so to speak.
Well, I think there's going to be some landscaping treatments that are proposed to create a little bit of a visual separation. Because Mr. Donio, I think, also wants that as well for himself.
Okay. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's all right. So the list of variances, there's a 3.2 acre requirement for the lot that's involved with the flag lot because we don't have public sewer. And with the deed restriction that we're proposing of other lands, we're essentially going to get that. So the nitrate dilution will be achieved that the Pinelands wants. It's technically a variance, but we feel, and I feel, we're meeting the spirit of what's required for density and for nitrate dilution. So 2 other variances that are required are associated with the side yard of the house. And this large dwelling that's shown, the large footprint, there's a side yard setback on the west side and a side yard setback on the east side. Both roughly 41 feet. One of them's 41 and a half, one of them's 41.1 on the east side. The side yard requirement on each side is 80 feet. Our lot is the proper width. It meets the standards for width. So if you take 80 feet and 80 feet off of 171, it only leaves an 11-foot area for us to build a home. And I think the side yard setback is pretty aggressive and pretty large as far as allowing a lot width to be 171, but having 80-foot setbacks from each side. It really squeezes the building envelope down to the point where you can't even build a home with an 11-foot building envelope. So we feel like, and I feel like 41 and a half feet is sufficient, especially out there with these rear yards that are 500 to 600 feet away from 3rd Street are not going to be an impact. And there's pole width. I believe I've already talked about that and gave some justification for that. There's the depth of the pole, which is required to be at a maximum of 400 feet. It's 563, and that was done in order to get this lot further back, allow some backyard area for the large home up front that exists, and also to get this back into this wooded area. It also splits the lot in 2 as far as area. There's 2 equal areas, and having 1.78 acres for each lot is meaningful because then we meet the 1.5 acre requirement for the regular zone standards, not flag lot standards, but at least the regular zone standards, and we're in line with that. And then the only other variance that I saw that was identified is if the pole's more than 400 feet, then the street shall be a public street with a cul-de-sac. I feel that's very inefficient and would be an overburden to build a street to public street standards, RSIS, just to serve one home. There is going to be a driveway and a parking area and a turnaround area, so a car wouldn't have to back up a whole 500 and some feet, and they'd be able to exit in a forward position. So based on my testimony, I feel that the benefits of having an extra lot and a development of an overly large property that's underdeveloped outweighs some of the negatives, and I think the negatives are minor, especially given the area and how these lots on 3rd Street have houses that are a good distance away. And that's why I feel that variances should be granted.
Thank you, Mr. Hall.
Any additional questions at this time?
Is the turnaround area that's going to be there, since there's no cul-de-sac, going to be large enough that if a fire truck got back in there, that they could be turned around?
Yes, we understand that that's going to be a requirement. I don't know if the fire chief has reviewed this application, but we understand that's part of the application process. And part of that will be to provide that area for turnaround in the front, which we are going to propose. It's not shown here. We wanted to focus on the setback issues, but we understand that is a necessity for that. So what we're looking to do is come in and be able to provide that K-turn for that fire truck and work with the fire chief to be able to make sure
Could that be put as part of this
That'll be,
application?
yes, that'll be
Because I
determined at
did
the
speak to
time
the
of-
fire marshal today, and he said he needed to review it, but he didn't review it, but he wanted to make sure it was part of it.
And in fairness to him too, he wouldn't be able to have really anything to review because we don't show that turnaround to
Correct.
show there would be compliant. So,
Okay.
so we would hope that that would be a condition of any approvals the board would grant, and we would acknowledge that we would need to work with him in that regard.
Right, and in order to construct the dwelling, we're going to have to provide a plot and grading plan for the proposed dwelling, and that'll lay out the details, and the fire marshal will have an opportunity to review and confirm at that point that we're satisfying any concerns that he might have.
Very good, thank you.
It's planned to be a paved driveway back?
Are you paving it? So from the edge of your driveway back. Is your existing driveway paved? Yes. All right, so there's an existing paved driveway servicing the current dwelling, and they would just, the paving would continue back to the proposed dwelling.
So then one cut into the street?
That's
and
correct.
And then the easement between the two properties would allow for access to both homes from that?
That's correct.
That one
So it's,
cutout
so it's a common driveway into your house, and then,
past the house, and then it splits off?
correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Similar to like what you would see like on the lake, you know, they have the shared driveways all
Yep.
back to the homes.
Any questions? Cheryl?
That concludes our presentation. We'll defer to your professionals and public comments. I do reserve the right to make a closing statement as always.
Sure. Stuart?
Pardon me, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our report is dated April 29th, 2024, and I think the applicant has, the applicant's planner has done an excellent job. So in explaining the relief required and his justifications for that, so I really have nothing to add from a planning standpoint.
Mark?
Thank you. So, as you heard on item A, I thought it was a good idea to mention about the easement, and they've agreed to do that. I think that would serve the properties well. Letter B, just if and when there's a dwelling to be proposed and built, I'll see it again as from a, I review the grading plans with the construction official, so at that time we'll address utilities, stormwater management, the septic and everything, and you know, all the variants that if they are approved tonight, will, you know, I'll make sure at the time that they're adhered to when I review that. Other than that, there's no other comments. I'll review the legals when, if it is approved, I'll review the legals for accuracy, and that'll put it to bed. So that's all I have.
It's pretty quiet. Any questions for the professionals? Got to be something here. Well, I know there's a bunch of variances that you're going to have to go through, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So how do you want to handle that, sir? Well, wait, give me 1 second. I'm sorry. I have to open it to the public. Does anybody in the public wish to be heard on this application? I do not see any, okay? Okay, then we could go. Proceed. Cheryl, you had something else?
No, I just want to summarize, I believe that we've met the burden for the variances that have been requested. This is a benefit for the family and no real detriment to anybody around it. And the conditions of approval will be the cross easement. We are going to record by subdivision deeds, so we'll get those legals and the deeds over to the board attorney and engineer for review prior to recording, and providing the plot and grading plan at the time of construction and getting the fire official to sign off, and we're okay with all of those.
Okay, Chairman, we're going to need a motion to approve the subdivision of block 1706, lot 4.03 into two lots. Lot A, which is where the existing home is, and lot B. There will be a deed notice restriction regarding the septic as described by the applicant.
And there'll be the following easements, there'll be the following variances set forth in the ARH report and recited a number of times tonight. First is on page 3 of the ARH report, which basically says minimum lot size. It should be 3.2 acres in a flag lot. It is in fact 1.78. The second is the minimum side yard setback, 11.9 or 25 feet is required. Then the minimum side yard setbacks for the flag lot, 80 is required. The east side and west side are actually 41.1 and 41.5. Then the two variances regarding the minimum pole width, which is 50 feet, and only 30 feet is being provided. Maximum pole depth, 400 feet is limitation. 563 feet is being requested, and the variance regarding if it's longer than 400 feet, a city street would need to be implemented. I believe they're the summaries of the variances that have been provided. Again, they're laid out in the chart provided by ARH. And conditions of that approval would be, one, that there is cross easements regarding the driveway, and there'll be a plot plan provided to the fire chief to determine the appropriate access and compliance with the fire apparatus getting to the back structure.
Everybody okay with that from the solicitor?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Scipione makes
I'll
one.
second it.
Mr. Messina, do we have any questions on the motion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call, please?
Councilman Oliva?
Yes.
James Matro?
Yes.
Ray Scipione?
Yes.
Ralph Capaccio?
Yes.
Michael Messina?
Yes.
Michael Hozick?
Yes.
Jonathan Bask?
No.
Chris Kalani?
Yes.
Chairman Oliva?
Yes, motion carried. Thank you very much for your presentation. You're always well prepared.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Might be a while before I'm back, but I'll see you soon.
You're not coming back in 2 weeks?
I don't think so. Not unless somebody calls me and asks me to fill in. Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Planner, quick question. In our master plan review, do we have any comments with respect to flag lots in it? Just because as I look at this and I see the requirement of the minimum lot width of the combined flag and frontage is 150 feet, but the minimum side yard setback of the flag is 80 feet on both sides, it's 160, it's 160 feet where there's only 150 feet.
We didn't deal with a...
I get what it's trying to do, but...
We didn't deal with flag lots per se, but the document is, I'll use the term, littered with comments saying
Of improvement.
that the ordinance needs to be reviewed and adjusted because of its flaws.
As long as we have that flexibility after the master plan's adoption to then review in the way you feel it's written, I'm good, because there's some, this is the first flag lot application we've heard in a little while, and there's certainly some funky stuff here that I think would have made this application a little easier to hear. So yeah, it would just be something I'd like to take a look at later.
I mean, I know it's after the thought, but being that close to the house is what it is. And then getting the back, and where they were talking about side yards, they couldn't fit a house back there.
Yeah, like that's
what I was going to ask you. At 80 feet, it would leave 11 feet, right? He said.
Yeah,
11 feet
because
from
they're 169 feet, and they got they have 160 feet, so
Correct.
they leave a 9-foot wide strip.
Right.
You know, and
So
Which is ridiculous.
That's ridiculous. I think the reason is you already have this long, narrow thing. You're basically adding more long narrowness, making, I think that's the overall intent, is that you can do a flag lot if you have the width.
Correct.
That's not the right width.
But they permit a minimum lot width of 150 feet. So it's like, it's a contradiction. I get it. It's trying to box you out,
gotta be
where
one
it's
or the
like,
other,
hey,
right?
exactly, it's gotta be one or the other, where it's like, hey, if you've got the 150 feet, you gotta go for variance for this. But if you don't have this, then you have to go for variance for that. It should be,
It should
you know.
be fat enough
Where
to
where
allow
else do you have a
for-
side yard
Exactly.
requirement
I
of 80
agree with
feet?
that.
You don't.
In what other zone do you have a side yard
None.
or residential use of 80 feet?
None.
On either
Well, I
side?
don't think it's a zone issue, it's the flag
No, it's the
lot
flag,
issue.
it's the lot.
Yeah, well, it is a
But-
part of the flag lot provisions that are a problem.
Right, but just like in a general zone, there's
Right.
no zone that we have where a side yard setback is anywhere close to
80
8
feet.
feet.
Lot A was 25.
Right. So I mean, and that's in the RR zone. That's probably the furthest, or AP. I don't know what AP's setbacks are, but I mean.
Well, there aren't any.
Oh, right, there's none in AP. Yep, there's none in AP and there's none in R3. So RR is 25 feet, so now you're talking 80 feet. And I get it, if we say, hey, we want 80 feet or we want 50 feet, well then the minimum lot width should be bigger than 150 feet. It should then give an appropriate building envelope for something to fit, and if that's 200
In
feet,
this
then.
case, if it was 25 feet side yards on either side, it gives you a building envelope or footprint of 100 feet. That's more than enough to put a reasonable house.
Yeah, from the first time I was on planning board, I was never a fan of flag lots. I just personally just don't like them, but they're permitted with some variances, and outside of that little width of the pole where it's, is what it is.
And I think Mr. Hawk was, pardon me, I think Mr. Hawk was correct in terms of, and we've seen this through the master plan, we've got a lot of lots in town that are extremely deep, regardless of the width, but extremely deep, and it's wasted land.
Plus, if you look at where it's butting up on the other side of that, the closest house is 300 and some feet
Miles
away.
away, yeah.
Right.
And
All right.
recognizing that land use tenure pattern, that's one of the reasons why the flag lots were introduced to begin with, but they shouldn't be an endless iteration of flag lots. It should be one additional in every case of a narrow lot, that you have that kind of a situation with the excess property tied up to the back.
Okay. All right, let's do our resolutions, if we could, please. So, we have 3 resolutions. Trinity Solar, which was 835 North 3rd Street, Hammonton. Applicant was approved to install a solar array on a vacant lot to provide power to the adjacent residential dwelling. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Scipione.
Second.
Mr. Matro, any questions on the motion?
I'm recusing.
Same.
Okay. Can we have a roll call, please?
James Matro,
Yes.
Ray Scipione,
Yes.
Ralph Capaccio,
Yes.
Michael Messina,
Yes.
Michael Hozick,
Yes.
Jonathan Bask,
Abstain.
Chris Kalani,
Yes.
Chairman Olivo.
Yes, motion carried. The next one's Polyville LLC. Applicant was approved to construct a ground mount solar facility in the M1 zone. Could we have a motion on that, please?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Messina, Doc Hozick, any questions? Roll call, please.
Ed Willerman,
Yes.
Councilman Oliva,
Yes.
James Matro,
Yes.
Ray Scipione,
Yes.
Ralph Capaccio,
Yes.
Michael Messina,
Yes.
Michael Hozick,
Yes.
Jonathan Bask,
Abstain.
Chris Kalani,
Yes.
Chairman Olivo.
Yes, motion carried. And the last resolution was Bates Mill Partners for 410 South Liberty Street. Applicant was approved for a change of use of a church and nursery school to a 2-family dwelling.
So moved.
Dr. Hozick,
Second.
Mr. Matro, any questions? Can we have a roll call, please?
Ed Willerman,
Yes.
Councilman Oliva,
Yes.
James Matro,
Yes.
Ray Scipione,
Yes.
Ralph Capaccio,
Yes.
Michael Messina,
Yes.
Michael Hozick,
Yes.
Jonathan Bask,
Abstain.
Chris Kalani,
Yes.
Chairman Olivo.
Yes, motion carried. We're going to just do a little brief discussion of master plan. We're not going to get into master plan tonight, but the other day, Councilman Oliva, and Mr. Weiser, and myself sat down just to do a little quick review of where we've got so far to this point. Jonathan or Stuart, you want to kind of just sum up what we talked about that morning?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, and then Stu can correct me or fill in the blanks. So pretty much we went through, as Chairman said, everything that we have gone through to date, pretty much flipping almost every page of this document, together from November of last year through now. From that, we had some questions, comments, thoughts, modifications, changes. Stu took notes, Billy has notes, I have notes. We kind of combined our notes and we said, these are all the things that we would like to see changes to or updates or minor modifications. Stu has already and is continuing to put together, a table of contents of modifications, so to speak, saying, okay, went through each page, and in the plan, I've highlighted everything that I've changed a certain color so that when we go through and we review, we don't have to read the whole plan over again. It's just a function of reading those 30 or 40 pages again. And there's a table of contents that will bring you to each one of those topics. So we'll be able to review. The goal is for next Wednesday, we don't meet next Wednesday, we meet at a special meeting on May 29th, so 2 weeks. But on next Wednesday, what additions, modifications, subtractions, comments Stu has completed in the plan will be delivered to the entire board in email. So we'll all have it along with that table of contents so that on the 29th we can say, here is everything that we wanted to see modified. Please take that week between the 22nd and the 29th to review. And when we come together on the 29th, we're just going to go right down the row and we're going to say, do you have any questions, thoughts, comments, additions, whatever? And if you have them, bring them up. We'll talk about them. If you don't have them, then we'll just move right down the row. And we'll go straight down, and that'll allow us to go through any of the thoughts that we had.
And that gives you the week, not to interrupt you real quick, but just to emphasize what he's saying, that gives you the week to really take a look at it, because we want to get this done, but and if you have questions, don't be afraid to bring those questions up and say, hey, listen, I'm still confused about it, I want to know more about it, or I'm not happy with it. But as Jonathan was saying, it should give us that
time.
Narrow it down. And there might be a couple more things we're going to need to discuss, because we will. But go ahead,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No. And that's the exactly right, is that we'll sit there and then whatever people bring up and say, well, I want to talk about this specifically, that's what we're going to talk about. And if you're good with it and comfortable with it, and it's a topic we all feel comfortable with, well then okay, we already talked about it in previous public sessions. We're just going to say, all right, we're good with it to move forward. The one thing that Chairman and Stu and I did talk about was there was a lot of discussion surrounding the AP zone and modifications to AP and RR, where there was boundary and lens changes there, and then AP to some commercial district where AP barriers HB, or where it butts up against the industrial district. When Mr. Wollerman had made the recommendation, in the discussion with Pinelands, there's going to either need to be a trade-off, a one-for-one, because if you say, hey, you're taking all this AP structure space away, that's not going to work for them, right? And if you start moving land that has not been developed into AP out of RR, you essentially losing developable space, which is also not advantageous. So we went through and we said, okay, these are the core areas where we feel that a modification from the AP district to something else is impactful or important to the community. We found 3 locations that we feel are worthwhile to continue to move forward with and bring to Pinelands for discussion. So Stu's going to put them together. We'll have them in that review for the 22nd. We can go through those 3 locations specifically. But the other boundaries between AP and RR, I think the recommendation is kind of leave it where it lies and leave the Pinelands Management District really where it is, right? So that was a thought, and then we know we had who was here tonight, Mr. Landgraf came at one of the meetings a little while ago to discuss a potential modification to M1. That's something we'll have to bring up and we'll have to talk to as well if that's something that we want to entertain. But I believe other than that, the modifications to individual zones were not plentiful, so.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've said from the beginning is I didn't want to make somebody take their property rights away from them and make them all of a sudden more restricted that they didn't know we were going to do that to them. And moving that lot line or that zone line could impact them in a negative way.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we were talking about it, we were saying, all right, well, if we just modify some of the lot lines by not negatively impacting someone, well, now you're taking away from the Pineland District or whatever
Right.
it is, and then the Pinelands would actually probably fight us on that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the things we don't want to see happen either, so.
It's walking that delicate balance as to what is going to be advantageous for the community, acceptable for the Pinelands, and not detrimental to specific property owners on the public, right? So it's trying to walk that delicate balance. I believe with only going after a few choice locations, which allows for commercial development in really core commercial areas that abut AP. I think they're really our main focus in terms of development within the community. I think those are ones that we can try and target. But really where I think we stand is in a week from today, we're going to get an email with a table of contents that says here are the changes. And what I would ask everybody is please read them, come prepared on the 29th. We'll discuss them. Between the 22nd and the 29th, whatever Stu hasn't completed, he's going to continue to work on. So we'll likely be able to have a discussion on the remainder on our meeting on the 6th, unless we have a lot for the 6th. Do we have a lot on June 6th?
As of now, no.
No, so we may be able to discuss the remainder on the 6th. And then I don't know if Mr. McGrady has an update, but at that point we would possibly be prepared to.
The chairman with a
timeline?
Yeah, he did. So we have our, he sent that to me last week.
Awesome.
And it's, the procedures for us to adopt. That's why we have him, which is definitely needed. Do you know it by heart?
Somewhat.
You want to do it, or you want me to kind of go off of you?
Well, I gave Shelley a copy because a lot of it, actually I couldn't give you because there's a number of.
No, I understand that.
Adjacent planning boards that have to be, or
Noticed.
municipalities that have to be notified. But generally, nothing starts until you raise your hand and say, we need to set a meeting to adopt the budget, or not the budget, adopt the master plan. And at that meeting in June, you could set a date, but you have to give at least 10 days notice.
Of course.
I would suggest giving maybe 20 days.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have a lot of certified mails that have to go out and so forth. There's some ministerial things that have to be done. But I'll be glad to share that with everyone, but it doesn't get started until you decide to set a meeting date. Say you decide it's third week of June, and then Shelley and myself and the chairman will make sure everybody gets served and documents exchanged. It has to be made available for review here. Most of it pretty standard.
Put online, have a copy here in Town Hall, that kind of stuff.
And the statute lays out very specifically what you need to do.
Do you recommend that we have that in a special meeting where that's the only thing that we discuss, so that if there is a number of public comments that's the only topic of discussion that evening?
Yes.
Okay.
When you adopt the master plan, it should be the only thing on that agenda.
Okay.
But I would recommend that it not be a special meeting, that it be part of our standard.
Well, that's what I would
schedule.
think. So we would turn around and make sure that our secretary does not schedule anything else on that day, and there's, we just put, whatever it may be, it just goes to the next
We'll just
meeting.
block that out.
And that meeting is only for that purpose.
Okay.
And it falls on the first or the third Wednesday of a regularly scheduled meeting,
Yeah.
and not like 4th of July or whatever.
Joe, how many people do you need?
On that public participation requirement.
It's the full board, not to exceed 9. The full board is 9. If somebody's not going to be here.
I understand.
That's the maximum that could vote on it. You simply need a majority.
Okay, all right.
Majority.
I understand.
On the
So
public
you'll be doing something with
participation
blueberries,
requirement.
Is that what you're Okay, go ahead.
So you got the floor. Can we hold the public hearing? We do need to have a public hearing, no?
Yes.
Do you hold the public hearing, get input back from the public, and adopt at the same time?
Well, it all depends how substantive. If the board says, listen, I'd like to consider that and discuss that further, then you could postpone that.
So you can make that decision that night?
Absolutely. And not to put too much on Stuart, but Stuart will make the presentation on the master plan to the board and to the public. Summarize it.
Right.
You're going to stand up and read the whole thing to us, right?
And additionally,
First beer cool.
and additionally to
The dinosaurs came.
what Mr. McGarty has sent us in regards to what we have to do to adopt this thing. There's also another little paragraph that has to get added in regards to the Rock Colacerto issue that has to get added into the master plan. That's one additional thing you'll see, correct?
There are two pieces that I sent Joe. One has to do with a fairly recent requirement from the MLUL amendment that came after we were well into this process. And the other has to do with how we're treating that. And he can look at it and decide how, bless it or not.
Because, correct me if I'm wrong, it's got to do with the consent order.
Yeah, that's not going to necessarily be,
Is it-
it's a modification that Stuart needs to make.
Okay, I thought it was,
To the document that's finally approved.
okay.
And it should be on the change list that you're saying.
Yes, so.
So it'll be on our change
Yes,
list.
yes.
Okay.
So I made that change in the draft. I just wanted to make sure that you were comfortable with what, well, you saw it? You saw what I wrote?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good then.
Yeah.
But you'll see that too. So, again, to emphasize what Jonathan has already said, and I already said as well, please look at it, please review it. He's going to make it easy to find where you're going so that you turn around and say, hey, listen, this change is on page 107. Go to it. It should be highlighted, correct?
Yes.
And he's going to make it easy for us to look at, but it's not like you're going to have to review the 500 pages again or
Right.
anything like that, or carry the book again, so, all right?
So
But if you-
when is this summary coming out?
We'll have the summary next Wednesday, the
Next
22nd.
And that gives you...
And we'll have a week to
Right.
review approximately 30 pages,
It's probably more than that. but
40 pages
by the
maybe.
time we get done, but.
Yeah.
Over the holiday weekend.
But a lot of it is
Yes.
just language changes that aren't substantive, but
Look,
I didn't want
everybody's
to.
off Monday.
I didn't want to have
I know.
anything where it seemed like I made a change and didn't tell you guys. So, other than commas and ands versus does, if there is something that's more than a three-letter word, I just wanted to make sure you guys were aware of it.
And
Three-letter words can change a lot.
Right, yeah.
Not four-letter, but three-letter.
And it's right over the holiday weekend. I can't think of a better thing to do with a beer in your hand on Memorial Day than to read our master plan. Right? Hot dog, a beer, and the master plan, right?
If
So.
that statement is true, you are really unimportant.
So my understanding is you all get paid overtime from, whatever it is you're already getting paid, you get double it. So-
Right.
So, or is it triple time on?
Yeah, triple time on a holiday.
Triple time on a holiday.
Only when it's on a Sunday.
So our next meeting is not June 5th, but our next meeting is May 29th?
Yes.
Okay?
Special meeting for master plan.
A special meeting that we'll be discussing this. Please do what you need to do with it and take a look at it. And if you have any questions, you could always reach out to Jonathan. You could send Stuart an email, or you could send me an email if you need more clarification as well. Okay? And Mr. Wollerman's always up on everything as well, so he's like a master at things.
You know where to find him.
Yeah, right, exactly. Okay, there's really no one in the audience that wants to come forward, I don't believe. Okay. All right, anything for the good of the order? All right, then we're adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.